is the story of a young woman from a well-to-do family in Fall River, Massachusetts, who was put on trial in 1893 for the murder of her father and stepmother. Lizzie Borden took an axe and gave her mother 40 whacks, and when she saw what she had done, she gave her father 41. Lizzie Borden, found guilty in a nursery rhyme of hacking her parents to death in 1892, one of the most infamous parricides of all time. What the rhyme obscures is the fact that a jury acquitted Lizzie of the murder charges. Police never solved the crime. Nonetheless, the suspicion that Lizzie was in fact the killer has persisted for more than a century. In the 1890s, Fall River was one of the wealthiest towns in Massachusetts, the world's largest producer of cotton textile cloth. The Bordens were one of its prominent families. 32-year-old Lizzie and her 42-year-old sister Emma were the proverbial spinsters, living with their father, Andrew Jackson Borden, and a stepmother, Abby. By all accounts, Lizzie was an unusual girl. Despite her wealth, she was known as a thief, a shoplifter, with a jealous longing for luxury.
She was very well dressed. She liked fine homes, fine carriages, and appears to have would have preferred a life on the hill.
The hill was the most fashionable section of Fall River, adorned by stately mansions. The Bordens, despite Andrew's financial success, lived on 2nd Street, and it paled by comparison.
It was an area very much occupied by people living in genteel poverty. Well, there were some prominent families there who, like Andrew Borden, chose not to leave that area. He was very true to his Yankee heritage of frugality, waste not, want not.
But Lizzie's father made one notable exception to his austerity rule. He wore a ring Lizzie had given him when she was a young girl.
She had a very close, deep relationship with her father. Now, maybe it was too close, and there have been some hints of that. People saying that maybe she was sexually abused, or maybe there was some kind of incest.
Lizzie did not get along with her stepmother, Abby. By 1892, the year of the murders, Lizzie would refer to Abby only as Mrs. Borden. Their 2nd Street home was literally a house divided. A door that was always locked separated Lizzie and Emma's rooms from their parents. The sisters kept mostly to themselves. They ate meals alone and received visitors privately in their 2nd-floor guest room. An aura of distrust grew in the house after a suspicious burglary in broad daylight. While Andrew Borden never accused Lizzie, he seemed to suspect an inside job. From that day on, Mr. Borden left every bedroom in the house locked.
There are many people who say there was a great deal of hate in that household, and that it got to the point where people in the streets and the neighbors knew all about it.
August 4th, 1892. After breakfast, Mrs. Borden ascended the staircase, announcing to Lizzie and the maid, Maggie Sullivan, that she was going to make up a bed on the 2nd floor. The maid went about her assigned chore, scrubbing the 1st-floor windows, inside and out. Mrs. Borden was never seen alive again. Sometime that morning, she was bludgeoned to death with a sharp hatchet-like instrument. There had been at least 11 blows, suggesting a killer who was furious at the victim. 2 hours later, Mr. Borden returned home. When the maid heard him fumbling with the lock, she came to the door and let him in.
And she claimed and testified that she heard at the top of the stairs a laugh, and that Lizzie was at the top of the stairs. There are those who will say that she was laughing at her stepmother's body.
Mr. Borden, unaware of the murder and feeling ill, went to the sitting room where he dozed off on a sofa. The maid went off to her room on the 3rd floor.
She said she heard the City Hall bell strike 11, and shortly thereafter heard Lizzie call Maggie, "Come quick, someone has killed Father."
Indeed, someone had bludgeoned Lizzie's father in the exact same gruesome manner, as many as 14 blows.
1 or 2 blows to the head likely would have done it. Repetitive blows, such a tremendous number of blows, one after the other, these constant blows, almost in a frenzy. Obviously, there was great rage and hate.
Suspicion quickly focused on Lizzie. Questioned while sedated, she gave conflicting accounts of where she'd been, including an alibi of eating pears out in the barn. A drugstore clerk told investigators that 2 days before the murders, Lizzie had tried to buy prussic acid, a deadly poison. Evidence said police that Lizzie was predisposed to murder. Lizzie aroused further suspicion by burning the dress she'd worn on the day of the murders. Police had never detected any blood on the dress, but by torching it, Lizzie only added to the speculation. Investigators surmised that Lizzie had killed her parents out of resentment and a desire to collect an inheritance. Lizzie Borden was arrested on August 11, 1892, and held in this prison for the murder of her parents. The 12-day trial began on June 5, 1893. Covered by the newly formed Associated Press in Boston, the Borden parricide story went on the wires around the world. As he opened this case, prosecutor Hosea Knowlton sensed he would lose. There was no clear physical evidence linking Lizzie to the crime, and the court threw out her conflicting statements about her alibi because she had made the comments without a lawyer present. The state faced formidable opponents. Lizzie could afford the best attorneys. She put together a turn-of-the-century dream team.
Her defense team was headed by George Dexter Robinson, who had been a former Massachusetts governor and actually had appointed one of the 3 presiding justices at that final trial.
During trial, prosecutor Knowlton showed the jury how the murders were committed, bringing in the actual skulls of Andrew and Abby Borden, and demonstrating how a hatchet found at the crime scene could have been used to wield the blows to the Bordens' heads. In dramatic fashion, Lizzie swooned and fainted. The prosecution's case lasted almost 2 weeks. Then the defense, led by George Robinson, confidently presented its side in a single day.
The defense had this woman that they were portraying as a victim. It was impossible that she had done it. She was a good girl from a good family, and good girls from good families didn't do things like that.
Prosecutor Knowlton tried to play to the prejudices of the all-male jury. He focused his closing arguments on the prevailing Victorian stereotypes of women. If they lack in strength and coarseness and vigor, he argued, they make up for it in cunning and dispatch, in ferocity. A strategy that backfired. The jury took only 1 hour to acquit.
The jurors stated later that they felt that no woman could commit such a horrible crime. People refused to believe that something like that was possible.
Soon after her acquittal, Lizzie inherited $125,000 from her parents' estate. She moved with her sister to the Hill. But the tightly knit Fall River community scorned Lizzie for the rest of her life.
It was left to her contemporaries to sentence her. The very people, in some cases, who stood up and testified in her behalf, shunned her immediately after her acquittal. She was left very much alone.
Unlike the 32-year-old Lizzie Borden, most parent killers are in their teens or early 20s. Once punished under the juvenile justice system, they're entitled to a sealed criminal record and a clean slate, a chance to start life over. But they don't always get that chance. In 1995, Harvard accepted a bright young high school student named Gina Grant. But when school officials learned that Gina had killed her mother 4 years earlier, they told her she was no longer welcome in the Ivy League.